Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships and our Saturday edition video as we look at the Tier 8 Japanese destroyer, the Akizuki, more commonly known as the gunboat Tier 8 destroyer of the Japanese line, as you also have the torpedo line among the Japanese destroyers. So we're going to be doing a ship overview, talk about what type of ship Akizuki is. We'll look at the modules, upgrades, consumables, and the commander skills, and I'll have that time stamped so you can easily find if you want to skip to something throughout the video. So, and first talking about Akizuki, what type of destroyer are we talking about here? You have three types of destroyers in the game. You have gunboat destroyers, you have torpedo destroyers, and you have a hybrid destroyers, which are really a mix of the two. The Akizuki is a gunboat destroyer, though she can lean a slightly hybrid because of her torpedoes, but I find her more befitting in the gunboat category, particularly because of these guns. These are 100mm guns that can do a lot of damage, especially if you mount the IFHE skill that we talked about yesterday, where you can go from your armor penetration capacity from 30mm to 37mm. And they have a reload time of just 3 seconds without adrenaline rush or anything kicking in. So these are quite nasty guns that you have here on the Akizuki. And you can dish out a lot of damage. The torpedoes, just briefly talk about those. They're 610mm quad torps. So you only get one rack of them. They have a hard-hitting damage, 10km range, 112-second reload time on the torps, but you also get access to the torpedo reload booster, which we'll talk about shortly. In terms of the armor layout, it's going to be very standard what you find among the Tier 8 destroyers. 19mm fore and aft end side plating, aft end plating, and 13mm on the superstructure. So let's take a look at the modules. So I talked a little bit about the modules yesterday. Mostly the hull. I didn't really hit on the torpedoes or the gunfire control system. But for your guns, with the build right now, we have a 3-second reload time. And then we'll talk about the range here in a moment. The hull is the first thing you want to research on this line. I talked a little bit about that in yesterday's video. Not only is the main thing being the survivability, because you go from 19,100 to 23,600. But you get a slight bolster in your AA defense, and particularly the maneuverability. When you upgrade to the Hull B, your rudder shift time drops from, I think it's 7.8 seconds to 5.6 seconds, if I remember correctly. So you will feel sluggish because of having a slower rudder shift time in Akizuki, so you definitely want to make that not so harsh. Torpedoes, the stock ones have a quicker reload time, but they don't do as much damage and they don't have as much speed, where you can see we go from 17,200 damage and 62 knots to 20,967 damage and 67 knots. So I recommend going with these, even though you lose, 11 seconds off your reload time. The gunfire control system, your stock range is 11.3 kilometers. And once you buff that, you go to 12.5 kilometers. So this is really nice. So I would do the hull first, then the guns, then the torpedoes, because the guns is really what this destroyer is about. You're also going to feel rather sluggish in the Akizuki. Your maximum speed is 33 knots. I need to check if I actually have the Sierra Mike flag mounted, which I do not. So when we come back and look here, now we're going 34.7 knots, okay? And this is not accounting engine boost. So you really feel like it takes a longer time to get around the map compared to maybe some other Tier 8 destroyers in the game. So if you have the capability, run Sierra Mike flag. In terms of the upgrades, for the first slot, we're going to run the main armaments modification 1. It reduces the risk of the main battery and torpedo tubes from becoming incapacitated by negative 20%. Your main battery and torpedo tube survivability plus 50%, and your repair time for your main battery and torpedo tubes, if they should become incapacitated, is reduced by negative 20%, meaning you get those to online much quicker if they should become knocked out. So this is what I would run. You also have an auxiliary armaments modification 1. You don't have a secondary battery on the Akizuki, and your AA, you're not an AA destroyer. There's other destroyers that play the role of AA much better, like the Tier 8 Premium US Destroyer the Kid, which I'm going to be giving away for free when we hit 1,000 subscribers in our 1,000 subscriber giveaway. So if you're not subscribed, make sure to smash that subscribe button and keep in touch or keep watching. So hopefully we'll be hitting 1,000 subscribers next month is what I'm hoping for, but we'll see. The magazine modification, this reduces the risk of your ship's magazine detonating by -70%. But if you just take the Juliet Charlie combat signal, it completely eliminates the risk of your magazine detonating. So run that if you're playing randoms, ranked, clan battles, not co-op. Okay. And then for the second upgrade slot, you have damage control system modification 1. Risk of catching fire, -5%. Risk of flooding, -3%. This is something you see much more common on cruisers and battleships. I don't run this on any destroyer that I have in the game. What I go for is the standard upgrade is the engine room protection, because it reduces the risk of your engine and your steering gears from becoming incapacitated by -20%. Your engine and steering gear repair time, if those two should become incapacitated, is reduced by -20%. So that's what I would recommend running. You can also run the engine boost modification 1. This increases the action time of the engine boost and emergency engine power consumables. But in this case, we just have the engine boost here on the Akizuki. So your action time of 120 seconds. If I do the math, you add 36 seconds. So you have 156 seconds of consumable action time if you equip this. You can. And if you just click on here, I already have one in reserves that I can mount, but it's for coal in the armory. So if you don't have one available, you just click on it. It'll take it to you to show you. Would I run engine boost modification 1 on Akizuki? Maybe, yeah, especially if you're doing more gunboat out in the open. You don't have a smoke screen. That comes in handy, just longer action time on the engine boost. So I could see myself running this in the future. But I'm saving that for a different ship in the game. So otherwise, stock-wise, just run the engine room protection upgrade. For slot 3, you have a few options going on here. You have the main battery modification 2, your main battery traverse speed plus 15%. If we look at the 180-degree turn time of these guns, they're 11.3 seconds, so actually it's not bad. So I don't feel the need to take the main battery modification 2. You have AA guns modification 1. Again, you're not an AA destroyer. Don't build into AA on the Akizuki. Especially when you're bottom tier, facing tier 10 CVs, you'll get smashed. Aiming system modification 1 is what I run. I run this skill mainly for the main battery shell dispersion, which is reduced by -7%. So that means you're getting tighter horizontal dispersion and vertical dispersion. Doesn't increase your sigma, which is the likelihood of a shell landing in the center of where you're aiming. It simply just increases the dispersion ellipse vertically and horizontally. So it means when I'm in these destroyer gun engagements, I'm more likely to hit more where I'm aiming. So I really like that. You also get a buff of the torpedo tube's traverse speed plus 20%. So that's nice, but I'm mainly taking this for the guns. You have torpedo tubes modification 1, torpedo speed plus 5%. This skill is really for torpedo destroyers or maybe even a hybrid type torpedo destroyer. Not on Akizuki. I wouldn't recommend this on Akizuki because you only get 1 rack of 4. And then you have to use your torpedo reload booster to pick up the rest. You also have the special upgrade to smoke generator modification 1. This extends the action time of your smoke generator. So smoke generator action time right now is 20 seconds. And so if we take that skill, let's say plus 30%, we're adding a few more seconds. But again, if you want a longer smoke screen, run the American destroyers. Again, Kid could do that really well. So take aiming systems modification 1. It's what I would recommend. For slot 4, you have damage control system modification 2. This skill is, again, it's more for cruisers, battleships in the game. I don't run this on destroyers at all. Find it rather pointless because you can get a lot more benefit out of the propulsion modification. As an example, time taken to reach full engine power when accelerating, negative 50%. So that helps you get out of the way of torpedoes, especially when you have engine boost going on. I'm kind of laughing and chuckling because I was trying to avoid a CV torpedo strike and smoke, and I ate a torpedo and died, which was rather frustrating. But you get the point. Otherwise, you could also run the steering gears modification. We talked about how the rudder shift time on Akizuki is quite poor, so negative 20%. So let's look at right now. Our rudder shift time is 5.6 seconds. If I can use my calculator correctly, you can shave off 1.12. So 5.6 minus 1.12, you get down to a 4.48 second rudder shift time. So I would say to you as a player, it really is your preference. If you want to test out both, you can. Of course, granted, it's going to cost you 1,000,000 credits, or if you just simply mount and demount for doubloons, you can do that as well if you already have one. But you can test out both. I have just always tended to lean towards the propulsion modification when I'm juking, like you saw. For example, in the ranked match yesterday when I was facing the Olden, I popped the engine boost. He took a salvo at me from almost being a dead stop, and I accelerated out of the way, and I don't think I took any shells from his main battery. So that's the power of being able to completely avoid a salvo with the propulsion modification 1. Depth charges modification 1, submarines aren't fully instated into the game yet. Wargaming's still making a lot of changes to submarines. I can't even keep track of what all they're doing with submarines these days. And you're not guaranteed to see submarine when you're playing. So I would just say one of these two is what you're more apt to go for during this current update 11.4. For the 5th slot, you have torpedo lookout system. I don't recommend that on Akizuki. Concealment system modification 1 is what I'm running. So when we look at concealment, it's 6.3, but if we come over into the exterior and I mount on, let's just say, I was looking at one a moment ago that felt kind of befitting, Lunar Warrior, we drop down to 6.1, detectable range by air 2.9. So when we come back and look at that skill, it also gives us the other bonus of dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship is an increase, so plus 5%. But you mainly take this for the concealment. Like I said, the concealment on the Akizuki, it's not fantastic. It's not terrible. You're kind of in the middle running ground, I would say, with a 6.1 kilometer concealment at tier 8. And you can see there's sometimes I was getting out detected by enemy destroyers. I knew roughly where they were, but I disclosed the distance and could start opening up on them because they were just a couple hundred meters away. We also have the steering gears modification 2. This would reduce your rudder shift time negative 40%, steering gears repair time negative 80%. So you could build that on top of the two skills here, combine them. But I like the concealment because it allows me to get closer in and have those destroyer gun engagements like you saw illustrated in the ranked match and the randomness battle in yesterday's video. That video will be linked at the end of this clip as well if you want to see this build in action. Yeah, ship consumables modification 1, I don't recommend that either. Really, this is the number 1 I would recommend, and if you want to forsake concealment, then I would recommend steering gears modification 2. Okay, so let's talk about the consumables. You have a standard damage control party, action time of 5 seconds, reload time of 38 seconds. We have 3 smoke screens, action time of 20 seconds, dispersion screen time is 89 seconds. This is really handy when you need to stop, slow down, and you start opening up on enemy ships in the game, where you can farm them for a bit because you have good penetration capacity with your HE. You have fantastic AP performance when ships go broadside to you. You can do a lot of damage to them. So this is handy. The engine boost, this is also very handy, especially when you're open gunboating and you're trying to juke incoming shots. So you really want to have this. We talked about even pairing it with the special upgrade of extending the engine boost time, which I would recommend, but I'm just saving my coal and I'm just fine with the engine room protection for now. Then what really helps this line is the torpedo reload booster. Okay, so you can dump off your first torpedoes and then hit this torpedo reload booster. You'll have another rack of 4 torpedoes in 5 seconds. So very, very helpful. It has 152-second reload time, so it takes a while for this to come back up, but if you use it well, then it's quite nice. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about our commander. So I am running a seasoned commander here on Akizuki. He has an enhanced skill, which gives you the survivability expert, where it's, instead of it being plus, I think, was it 300 for, plus, instead of it being plus 300 to 350, it's 400. I can show you where I purchased the commander. You get him in the armory, and apparently it just turned past noon where I'm at. Let's see, armory. We'll go look at the commanders. Let's see. We have something. The Return of Destroyer Black. Okay. Commanders. There's so much going on. Let's see here. I'll scroll down. This is our guy. So he has, he's for 35,000 coal. You can see Survivability Expert also for planes. Oh, then also Emergency Repair Specialist. So I like running him because of that additional HP you get for your destroyer. I'm trying to remember what the standard HP per tier is. Let me look at another tier 8 destroyer. Let's look at Benson. 350. Okay, I was right. I wasn't sure. So you get 400, that plus 50 for each, or 400 instead of 350. So that's really nice. So that you bolster your health pool up to 23,600. Okay, and then when I was looking at the modules, this was being impacted because of having this skill mounted. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the commander. Okay, yesterday's video I referenced the bread and butter build for a destroyer, and when I say that, it's these 4 skills here. Okay, so preventive maintenance reduces risk of the main turrets, torpedo tubes, steering gears, and engine becoming incapacitated by -30%. Very important. Last stand is a must for destroyers. The ship remains partially able to sustain speed and maneuverability with the engine and steering gears incapacitated. If you don't have this skill and your steering gear gets knocked out, you could simply be sailing in circles. If your engine gets knocked out, you're just dead in the water sitting there, and ships can just roast you. Okay, so you want last stand. For 6-point commander, pick up the survivability expert. Even better if you have Takeo Suzuki. That's how I'm going to pronounce his name. Probably wrong, but we'll go with that. So again, we're really working on the defensive skills here. Then coming up, pick up Concealment Expert, another defensive skill. Ship's technability range reduced by -10%. With camouflage and the upgrade we put in slot 5, that's what allows us to get down to the 6.1 concealment. Okay. After that, you want to go for the Adrenaline Rush. So this is what improves your reload time. So we have a 3-second reload time on the main battery right now. But you saw I was running 2.7 seconds something in yesterday's video when I was losing health. So you get down maybe 2.6 second reload time, 2.5 second reload time, depending on how much health you've lost. It also buffs your AA continuous damage, and it reduces your torpedo reload time. That's not the big thing. I really take it just for the guns, so we can dish out more of this these great IJN HE shells here on Akizuki, the 100 millimeters. Then you want to run the IFHE. So your main battery HE shell armor penetration capacity is improved by plus 25%. You don't have secondary battery, so that second line doesn't apply. However, the chances of causing a fire by HE shells without modifiers applied are reduced by half. Okay, so you can see now that our HE chances of causing a fire on target is 2.5%. This destroyer line, in my opinion, it really isn't a fire starter line to begin with because you only start out with 5%. So the fact that you can run the IFHE and you see the armor penetration capacity in the middle section there, 37 millimeters. Without that, it's 30 millimeters. You really want to run this skill because on these 100 millimeter guns, because a lot of the ships you run at tier 8 and higher, they're coated with 32 millimeter plating, okay? So when you run IFHE, you can penetrate the bows of a lot of cruisers, different battleships, different parts of the ships in the game, the armor thresholds, right? So this is really important, and I really recommend it. You run it on the gun line as you go from the Akizuki, Kitakaze, and the Harugumo. To me, this is really a must. It really helps bolster your defense or attack, that you're getting a lot more penetrations than you are non-penetrations. And you can see me demonstrating that in the video yesterday that again will be linked at the end of this video. The first battle ranked, we didn't have IFHE. Next battle, I mounted the IFHE to help show you the difference, and it was astounding. A lot more penetrations than non-penetrations. Okay, very good skill. So now that puts us at a 16-point commander, and we have 5 points left. So how would we utilize our remaining 5 points? That is a very good question. Okay, so let me show you a few options. I really feel like it's probably going to be more up to you as the player with what you would like to run, okay? I know some of you really like the Superintendent. You could run that. You saw in yesterday's random video, I used all of my engine boost, I used all of my smoke screens, and I used all of my torpedo reload boosters. It's not common that to go through all of the consumables like I did in that randoms match yesterday means you're basically living till the end of the battle. So if you're dying a lot in the beginning of the battle, I'd say you're playing too aggressive. If you tend to die usually halfway into the battle, then you might not get much use and benefit out of the Superintendent. And again, it's a defensive skill, okay? For now, I don't intend myself to lean towards this, okay? But that's just telling you the caveats if you take that skill. RPF. So there's been multiple times we've ran into destroyers that we don't know where precisely they are because our concealment is kind of mediocre. I might be more recommend radiolocation skill if your concealment was worse on Akizuki, but I don't find 6.1 to be terrible. For those of you who are newer wondering what the radiolocation skill does, when you mount this skill, the player will have the direction to the nearest enemy ship indicated to them. So you have this little arc that points off in this direction. So here it looks like you're 10 o'clock. Oh, there's a ship 10 o'clock from me. That's the nearest ship to me right now. So if you're hunting a destroyer that has 5.4, 5.5 concealment, it's very helpful. But the enemy player is alerted that a bearing was taken on their ship. They get slow located center right hand of their screen. But I don't find it beneficial for myself with my play style, okay? I'm just trying to go through some of the skills I know some of you will probably be asking about. The other thing we can do here is you can pick up the main battery in AA Specialist. You're primarily taking this for the main battery reload time, which drops to -5%. So we go from 3 seconds to 2.8 seconds. I like that. Because then when Adrenaline Rush kicks in, you can get a reload time of down to 2.5, 2.4 seconds if you've lost some health. The AA difference, so you can see it's 60 without, 62 rating with, where our continuous AA damage goes from 172 to 189. It's nice, but really it's the main guns is why you would like to take it. The other skill that some of you might be talking about in the comments I can foresee is the main battery in AA Expert. Your main battery firing range plus 20%, damage from AA shell explosions plus 15%, okay? So our range is going to go from 12.5 kilometers to 15 kilometers, okay? That is quite savage, if you will, that you have the range of a cruiser basically in a tier 8 destroyer. So you can see already goes up +1. Would I recommend this skill? To the player base in general, no. Because my concern is that, oh, I can shoot a ship from 14, 15 kilometers away. And then all of a sudden you have destroyer players start playing as if they're cruiser players in the back and not performing their destroyer duties, okay? This skill comes more in handy when you are gunboating just cruisers and battleships that are further at range, or you're kiting away from them as they're pushing in. You can use your engine boost, juke some salvos. That's where I see the benefit of the main battery and AA specialists come in here, okay? The AA part is that damage from shell explosions is increased by plus 15%, so plus 210. So you go from 1400 to 1610, okay? If the enemy carrier flies into your flak. If you did run this skill, then I would say run the incoming fire alerts. That would be your 21-point build. Now, for what I would like to run on Akizuki, you ask? I might be tempted to run this. To be honest, if the two skills, the skills I'm torn between most is running this or running this, okay? So let me talk about this first real quick. What I like about this skill is that you do get a permanent effect, permanent buff on your reload time of dropping down to 2.8 seconds rather than 3 seconds, okay? The reason why I probably lean to this one a bit more than the main battery and AA expert is I know my playstyle as a destroyer. To me, if you're in a destroyer like Akizuki, your goal should be to take out the other enemy destroyers, okay? You saw me display that in the two videos yesterday, or the video yesterday of the two battles, because if you destroy the enemy destroyers, you open up a lot of possibilities for your team, okay? So me having a faster reload time in these destroyer engagements, because most of the times when you have destroyer on destroyer and gun engagement, you're not doing it from 10, 11, 12 kilometers, 15 kilometers away. It's happening around that 6 kilometer, 5 kilometer, 7, 8 kilometer, okay? So then this skill becomes useless in that example. I like to push up. I like to help my team take out the enemy destroyers when possible, okay? So for me, I'd rather have that 12.5 kilometers because if you watched yesterday's video, again, a destroyer smoked up in the ranked battle from me, and there was no one else within my 12.5 kilometer gun range bloom, and I could keep shooting into the smoke screen and kill him. If I had 15 kilometer, I would have been detected, and I wouldn't have been able to keep shooting him in the smoke screen, okay? So that's something where a lot of people think the main battery firing range, oh, it's terrible, it should be further. It can kind of also be a blessing in disguise, if you will. And then when I'm looking at where would I want to utilize my other 2 points, I lean towards the priority target, okay? This skill is just bottom line. It's really good because it tells you how many enemy ships are targeting you at that point in time, okay? So the detection indicator additionally shows the number of opponents on the enemy team that are currently aiming at your ship with their main battery guns. So that tells you if you need to go dark, or you're having this destroyer on destroyer gun engagement and you see 4 or 5 enemy ships are targeting you, then that means you probably need to go dark. Alternatively, I've been getting better at not running this skill, and I just try to look around with free look to see if there's other ships targeting me while I'm in a gun engagement. But the reality is, if you're on a destroyer gun engagement, it's hard to look around and see what the other enemy ships are doing because you really need to focus on taking out the enemy destroyer you've engaged with. Also, this gives you the bonus if you're only in a destroyer gun engagement and you see it go from 1 to none are targeting you, 1 to none, then that means that destroyer is dumping torpedoes on you, or even a cruiser as an example. So that's helpful to know. So then you might know, I need to cut the throttle, I need to turn left, I need to turn right, however that may be. So all around, really good. So right now, this is probably more on this is what I would recommend running on the Akizuki. Again, you could totally run this build. It's really up to you as a player. I just am mindful that don't be playing in the back 13, 14, 15 kilometers away in your Akizuki. You're meant to get up and combat the enemy destroyers, okay? So that's just the caveat I carry if I recommend this build. Alternatively, yeah, you could run the radio location if you keep finding yourself maybe in situations in your playstyle where you're not sure where the enemy destroyer is. In the two videos yesterday, or the two battles yesterday, I pretty much always knew where the enemy destroyers were, because once they get in your concealment of that 6.1 kilometer, then it's like, well, it's probably he's in this little zone here, as you saw me demonstrate in the video yesterday where I clicked on the mini map where they were. And then if you decided that, hey, I'm constantly burning through my consumables, then I could see doing this, okay? But it just depends. If you die halfway through the battle often in Akizuki, you shouldn't be able to get to the point where you've already burned through all the consumables because of the reload time of those, okay? So number one, I'd recommend this for Akizuki. Number two, I'd recommend this for Akizuki. Number three, I'd recommend that for Akizuki. Number four, I'd recommend that for Akizuki, okay? But note that this setup and this setup are very close tie to me. Especially when I'm thinking later down the line, where maybe this build is a bit better for Kitakaze and especially for Harugumo, right? I haven't played those two destroyers yet, but when we're playing at tier 8, this is what I first and foremost recommend. But it's really up to you. I just try to show you the different possibilities and options you can take. So if you have a question about a skill I didn't cover, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you run on your Akizuki. I'm always interested to hear what others are running. But I give you, I can be biased sometimes with my recommendations because I know what works for me as a player with my play style. And in Akizuki, my main goal is to kill the enemy destroyers on the enemy team first and foremost. And then, of course, taking the objectives like cap zones and things like that. So if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you did not, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you are subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch you here next time. Take care.